Manchester United 3, Leicester City 0. When was the last time Manchester United had a Premier League game that looked that straightforward? Today, of course, we are going to take a look at how they did it. Before that, quickly subscribe to the channel. Please, we're trying to hit 40k this year. If you could help, it would be amazing. But let's get into it. So we're going to start off with Manchester United in possession, how they look to approach the game on the ball. And the reason we're going to do that is because I felt in the first half in particular, United were fairly impressive in this area. Starting at the back, where to be honest, it was fairly easy in terms of where Andre Onana was involved. Leicester City didn't press particularly high up the pitch. Initially, they sat off a little bit, ready to set traps. How did Manchester United look to approach that? Well, very much a back three for large parts of the game. Diogo Dalot playing a little bit deeper on the right-hand side, De Ligt in the middle, and Lisandro Martinez to the left, something we've seen a few times recently. And this, of course, allows Mazraoui to move further forward, takes the attention of the opposition winger, and gives United this base, this foundation, to try and build possession. So we've got this back three, and then in front of them we've got two midfielders. Most of the game, it was Ugarte and Casemiro in these positions, looking to hold down the fort in the centre of the pitch. Occasionally we did see someone like Ahmad sort of rotating inside, and we also saw Bruno Fernandes doing it occasionally, but it wasn't that often. Most of the time, it was these two in the centre of the park. And I have to say, I think the pair of them done pretty well on the ball. I'm not going to say they are elite technicians or they exactly dictated the tempo of the game. But in terms of how they played on the ball, it was largely quite safe, quite measured, but that meant that they completed their passes. And that was exactly what United needed at the base as the foundation to build possession further forward. In terms of how Leicester were trying to combat this at the time, it varied throughout the game. There were situations where Ndidi would move a little bit higher, and Leicester were basically in a sort of 4-4-2 formation, or perhaps a 4-2-2. But there were also situations where Ndidi would drop a little bit deeper. He is, of course, by nature, a ball-winning midfielder. So there were situations where he would move a little bit deeper into these positions. However, whichever structure Leicester were using at the time, United had more players in these positions. You see, Bruno Fernandes was kind of floating about the pitch, sometimes on the right-hand side, sometimes on the left, and Marcus Rashford was doing something similar, sometimes inverting, sometimes playing a little bit wider, and allowing Mazraoui to come inside. What you will notice is that either way, United often had four players in the middle of the pitch. There were also situations where it could actually turn into a diamond. Ugarte would hold as the deepest position, Casemiro would move a little bit higher, and Bruno Fernandes would move into the 10. Again, the key here is that Manchester United essentially had four midfielders, and let's move Ayew out of the way. Leicester City often only had three. So in situations where United were patient on the ball, could draw Leicester out, United often had the spare man, and when the technical quality was there, United were able to move the ball fairly effectively through the middle of the pitch. However, the problem was, this wasn't all that common. You see, there were several moments in this game where United just lacked that actual quality on the pass. A lot of passes were completed and statistically looked quite good, but players were often reaching for these passes or almost putting in a slide tackle to actually complete the pass. So it wasn't particularly smooth in the middle of the pitch. Tactically, United got into good positions, but the players struggled a little bit with the execution. However, a little bit wider, it was a different story, particularly when Mazraoui was wide on the left-hand side. You see, what United would look to do is build this base of three and use the wide centre-backs as an easy access point to the attacking wide areas. So Lisandro Martinez on the left-hand side with this easy pass out to Mazraoui, using his left foot to arch the pass outwards. Or on the other side, Diogo Dalot a little bit deeper, using his right foot and again arching the pass outwards towards Ahmad. Now, what's the benefit of doing this? United have quite an easy route of access. It's quite easy to move the ball forward in these positions. But what I really liked about United here was how we got players close to each other, in close proximity. We have seen spells this season where our wingers have looked a little bit isolated. And at times that's a good thing. It means you can go 1-versus-1 up against a fullback. But we've actually seen some situations where our wingers have been more like 1-versus-2 or 3 or 4. And that's no good at all. We didn't have that problem in this game, because particularly on the left-hand side, we were getting a lot of players over towards the ball to try and combine. And ultimately, when these players are this close to each other on this side of the pitch, you're going to see moments where it clicks. And we saw exactly that for the two goals. The first two goals, I should say. Manchester United here, this is the first goal. Four players close to each other on the left-hand side. None of these players are isolated. They've all got plenty of passing options. Bruno Fernandes plays the ball inside to Ahmad. And I mean, this bit of play from Ahmad is just delicious with the back heel. Bruno Fernandes comes in from the left-hand side, And it's an absolute worldy goal, right? The execution here is phenomenal. It's a brilliant goal from Bruno Fernandes, but it's possible because Manchester United have got players close to each other, they're rotating with each other, they're working together in these tight spaces. That's the reason that the goal happens. It's similar for the second goal as well. It starts with Ugarte with a really nice line-splitting pass out wide. He takes several players out, he plays through the line of the Leicester defence, and the ball goes wide to Mazraoui. But the important thing here is that Mazraoui is not isolated. He's got teammates around him, Casemiro and Marcus Rashford on this occasion. Now, why are they important here? Because they don't actually touch the ball, so how do they help? Well, it's this run from Casemiro. It just distracts the defenders as Casemiro makes that movement in behind the defence. And what that is going to do is give Mazraoui just the split second that he needs to work the ball onto his stronger right foot. And of course, once he'd done that, the quality was unbelievable. And just on Mazraoui, really good form at the moment. I mean, ever since he joined the club, he's been quality. I told you he would be. Technically, he's phenomenal. He just needs to stay fit, but he's playing very, very well for United. And the ball into the box is beautiful. And Bruno Fernandes is in there. But not just Bruno Fernandes. There's multiple players in the box for Manchester United because the players are, again, close to each other. Close proximity, attacking football. It worked pretty well. Do I think it was a perfect performance on the ball? To tell the truth, I don't. Again, I said it earlier, the technical quality was lacking a little bit. You know, completing the simple passes or simple carries with someone like Rashford. Rashford had a really poor game ultimately. Every time he tried to dribble, he would sort of lose the ball under his feet, kind of get a little bit tangled up. I wasn't particularly keen on his body language either. But there are other players as well where just simple passes, it might be a 1-2 at a throw-in, for example, where we just failed the pass. If United had been better there, I actually think it could have been a pretty good performance. But generally speaking, United were pretty decent on the ball. We need to create more chances still, but the execution when we got into the final third was actually pretty good, and the goals were phenomenal. But what I also liked about this performance was that defensively, it was fairly solid. Now, one of the reasons that Manchester United were fairly solid from a defensive point of view was because they didn't really have to open up. They didn't have to stretch the game. And the reason for that was because Manchester United actually scored fairly early for once. In fact, the first time in the Premier League that we've scored before the 34th minute. That's unbelievable. But it really helped United, because what it meant was that United didn't have to go chasing the game. So for large parts of the game, Leicester were able to play out from the back. We didn't see a particularly stretched Manchester United press, for example. The players were fairly compact, forcing Leicester to play one way and trying to set traps from there. In terms of how United set up, in terms of the actual structure, it was often a 4-2-3-1, a little bit like this, with obviously Rashford and Ahmad out wide, Bruno Fernandes behind Højlund. But there were also situations where it could be more of a 4-2-2-2, like we've seen for large parts of the season. But the important thing here was that even when Leicester got into their shape, and it's a pretty good shape, they create overloads in the middle, you know, they use a pretty good formation. The good thing for United, and the good defensive work that they did, was crowding the middle of the pitch. This kind of box here of Ugarte, Casemiro, Bruno Fernandes and Rasmus Højlund, all pretty intense players, if not the best tacklers, but they're all pretty intense. They really crowded the middle of the pitch. You can see it here. There's not really a way through the middle. And again, I think Ugarte and Casemiro deserve a lot of credit for that. They were good from a defensive point of view. Do they win all of their battles? No. Unfortunately, they don't. They don't win all of their individual duels. But between them as a pair, they sort of got through enough work that defensively, they protected us for large parts of the game. Were there situations where Leicester could play through? Absolutely. There are moments where United are a little bit slack and sort of an easy ball through here can be found and Leicester can get towards our back line. Or perhaps we lose our 50-50 challenge, which did happen on occasion. And again, Leicester can suddenly get at the back line. But generally speaking, United were fairly comfortable from a defensive point of view because the middle of the pitch was compact. It meant that we could force the opposition to play out wide, and ultimately that's just where you would want the opposition to be. You would rather the opposition are out wide rather than close to the goal. In terms of down United's left, Mazraoui locked down most things down his side of the pitch. He was good from a defensive point of view. Diogo Dalot struggled a little bit more, but ultimately kind of grew into the game and done enough defensive work. And the big thing for United was we were 1 goal up and then 2 goals up, which meant the game suited us. We could sit deep, particularly in the second half. I'm not overly fond of that approach. I would prefer us to be more intense, more aggressive, but we sat fairly deep for large parts of the second half. But we were able to do that because we'd already scored 2. And then the substitutes make a lot of sense. You see, in the first half, we've got Ahmad, a creator if you like, and then 2 runners, goal scorers, in Højlund and Marcus Rashford. We make 2 changes. Rashford comes off, Højlund comes off. Xerxes comes on, Garnacho comes on. We've still got a pretty good dynamic here. We've got creative players in Ahmad and Xerxes, but we've still got a runner with fresh legs. That's why these subs made a lot more difference, a lot more sense than what they have done in recent weeks. Christian Eriksen is also a brilliant player to bring on, because the passing range of this guy against an open team is phenomenal, and that's ultimately what happened. Leicester kept pushing players forward, trying to hurt United, trying to get back into the game, and ultimately that leaves space, and Manchester United can transition, and we saw exactly that for the third goal. This is game state. Eriksen's pass here, phenomenal. Leicester have pushed players forward. Eriksen takes most of them out of the game with that. It's unbelievable. And then I'm really impressed with Bruno Fernandes. I often criticise his ball carrying, but this is quality. Carries it here just inside his own half, carries all the way right towards the edges of the penalty area. As usual, times his pass correctly, finds Alejandro Garnacho. Garnacho takes a really nice touch to set himself, gives himself a bit of time, and then sets this ball out into the far corner. I mean, again, the finish is unbelievable. Leicester City might feel a little bit hard done by because ultimately United scored 2 worldies, and that doesn't normally happen. But the execution from Manchester United was brilliant, and ultimately that's why these players get paid a lot of money, because we know on their day they can do stuff like this. They can put the ball into the top corner from distance. Did Manchester United deserve a 3-0 win? Probably not quite 3-0. 2-0 probably would have been more, suiting of the game. United defensively looked fairly compact. Leicester had a couple of opportunities, but not too much, with United in a fairly deepish shape. In terms of on the ball, I thought United looked good for most of the pitch. The first 2/3, I liked the way that we progressed the ball. We just lacked that little bit of technical cleanness, if you like, on the ball. That ability just to find the pass, to keep the ball moving nicely. We lacked that a little bit in the final third, and it did reduce our chance creation opportunities, but we made up for it with some really good goal scoring work from the forwards. So it's a great day for Manchester United. 3-0. It puts us in a better position going into the international break. In terms of what happens from here, we're going to cover that on the channel. So again, subscribe if you want to, get notifications on so you don't miss videos. There's loads coming up over the next couple of weeks. For today, we're finished. So yeah, that's what we're doing for today. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.